What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Earth 3, and the ending of this is crazy. So what this does is this picks up initially in the Augusta Mental Health Institute, where you just have like this crazy guy who's just drawing like all these mazes and stuff on a wall somewhere. When a security guard approaches him, the dude starts freaking out and asking about Martha, which is to say Martha Wayne. And so that guy's going to be incredibly important here, but it's not what you think. That's the only thing that I'm going to put out there. This guy's reveal is amazing. So what it does here is it picks up a month after the death of Harvey Dent, which was what we saw at the end of Volume 2. If you need to get caught up, we do have a playlist. You're welcome to check it out. In effect, what's happening here is because of the fact that Killer Croc, who they also met in Volume 2 and is now part of the Bat family, because he's so familiar with the tunnels under Gotham City, this is actually how Bruce Wayne and Alfred end up figuring out where to build the Bat Cave. It's one of the cool changes, because normally in DC Comics, the Bat Cave is established as just like this giant cave under Wayne Manor that by whatever manner and whatever means Bruce Wayne basically came across. This one says it comes by way of Killer Croc. So it's a cool little way to kind of tie his character into the family and then give him a purpose for being there. There is also a little bit of banter that goes back and forth between Alfred and Killer Croc, but the reality here is Alfred just doesn't really trust him. This is one of the other things that I want you guys to notice too, is because Bruce Wayne goes to bat for Killer Croc when he says like he's incredibly strong, he knows the tunnels better than you or I, and I trust him. The kind of personality that Alfred Pennyworth displays here is usually more reminiscent of Batman, right? Just this guy who doesn't trust anybody, the ultimate cynic. So the fact that he would come forward and he would kind of believe in the best of people, it sort of makes him Superman-esque, right? He's not nearly the Boy Scout that Superman is, but he's not nearly as distrusting of the kind of Batman that we're used to. The problem here is that in the midst of all this, Bruce Wayne gets a call from Commissioner Gordon. Why? Because there's these guys who have basically instigated a robbery and they're just like spraying down the police cars with flamethrowers while they're making an escape. And it's amazing. Like, it's just one of the coolest things, right? They're just torching all this stuff. And so of course, Batman responds with the Batmobile. Now again, the Batmobile was designed by Lucius Fox. This is the first time we're seeing it. And I gotta be honest, I wanna know your all's thoughts. How does this Batmobile compare to the other Batmobiles that we've seen from Batman as a character in DC Comics, right? And even just like the Batman mythos in general, right? Batman 87 and all that kind of stuff. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. But the way this goes down, of course, is Batman does what Batman does, which is to say like he just kind of catches up to these guys, sends their car crashing into like a wall or another vehicle. And then in turn, like he has this amazing moment where like he just comes walking out of the flames when they blast him with a flamethrower. And it's just him looking at them and just being like, you're really pissing me off tonight. He looks menacing, man. He looks incredibly menacing here, and it's super dope because he immediately just starts pummeling these guys. And this is where we get a character that's being introduced for the first time in this story, because one of the guys makes it around the corner with all this money, and there's a woman standing there who's like, wow, right? Hits him with a whip, and it's Catwoman. Now here's the cool thing, man. Selina Kyle was introduced technically in the last video that we did, right? In Volume 2, but we didn't really know that she was Catwoman, at least not until the very, very end when you kind of got a reveal. But seeing her actually as Catwoman, she looks interesting. And I'm curious to see how you guys feel about her because she sort of reminds me of Harley Quinn, if I'm being quite frank. But one of the big questions that you guys had when it came to the last video that we did is Harvey Dent's sister, Jessica Dent. Because as most of you guys know, Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face because the side of his face is exceedingly damaged in some capacity. Sometimes it's acid, sometimes it's fire. It depends on how the origin story for his character is being told. But with Harvey Dent, while his face was fried, of course, he seemingly died in the last video that we did. And so a lot of you guys had the theory that because Jessica had the same kind of damage on the side of her face, that she ultimately became Two-Face. So this reveal is really cool. I'm curious to see if anybody figures it out before we get to the end of the video. But the way this goes down, right? The way this goes down is you initially have Jessica who meets with Bruce Wayne. And in a lot of ways, her having the side of her face being scarred and wearing a kind of piece of plastic, you would think would be something that would dishearten her or something that she would shy away from. Instead, she actually kind of leans into it. And she gets out there as the mayor and makes this speech to the city of Gotham, right? Where she says, like, are you innocent or are you guilty, right? These were the words of Harvey Dent. This is what he believed. And she does acknowledge the idea that there is a little bit of simplicity reality in that mindset, and to a degree it's kind of true, right? You know, if a man's family is starving and he robs a bank, is he a bad guy, right? Is he guilty for robbing the bank? Yeah, definitely. I mean, he went in there and robbed it. That's not really up for debate. But that's why things like extenuating circumstances exist, because you don't just give the death penalty for anybody who commits a crime because you don't know why they committed that crime in the first place. But the bigger point she's making here is she says, I'm guilty. We're all guilty. We are guilty of not doing enough for Gotham. And this is a great moment in the story, because one of the things that it establishes here is that it's very easy for individuals to kind of treat society as like this nebulous third party that exists out there that they have no control over, but are somehow controlled by. When in reality, society is just everybody who lives in a particular ordered civilization, right here in the States, Europe, Asia, whatever the case happens to be. And so by treating quote unquote society as some third party thing, and then shoveling all of your problems and everybody else's problems on the shoulders of society, it's easy to kind of throw your hands in the air and say, I'm not responsible for anything that's going wrong here. When in reality, they are. And that's the point that she's making here. We have been blaming everybody else, anything else, than ourselves. Gotham didn't get this way of its own accord. Corrupt politicians in the city of Gotham didn't just walk in one day and just seize control. They were voted there. They were put there. They were appointed there. Whatever the case is, she's like, we as the citizenry, it is our job to bring an end to this. And she even talks about Thomas and Martha Wayne. She says, the dark days of Gotham began with their deaths. It ends with my brothers. And that's true. In every instance of the Batman mythos, and it just kind of ties into the significance of Thomas and Martha, but in every instance of the Batman mythos, Gotham City really started to become terrible once they died. The idea of Gotham City being a rough place, that's true. That was always the case, but it wasn't really any more rough or worse than seemingly any other city that existed out there that had people who were of limited means struggling and doing whatever it took to survive. But following the death of Thomas and Martha, it struck a moral blow to the city of Gotham. It disheartened the citizenry because they were such great people. And so she says, Harvey gave his life protecting me during the Riddler's attacks. I missed his funeral because I was recovering in the hospital. I saw his tombstone later, but it won't be his tombstone that marks his life. It will be a safe, thriving Gotham City. And so she talks about how over the next several months, right, 6 months or so, they're basically going to be like renovating a wide variety of different places, underfunded parts of town, different things like that, that it will be designed in a way to basically turn Gotham City into a beacon for the world. Now, it's a really cool thing because that's always the motivation of Batman, of Bruce Wayne, really more than Batman. It never quite works out that way, but it is always a goal that's sort of there that Bruce Wayne's always striving towards. It's just various things that end up getting in his way. But what ends up happening is that in the middle of all this speech, Alfred pulls Bruce Wayne aside and says there was a security guard who was attacked by some crazy guy. They ended up basically moving him to another mental institution, and now we need to go see him because they said that he is a person that we effectively have to talk to. When they get there, right, when Bruce and Alfred get there, the beans are spilled on seemingly who this guy is, that he came in claiming to be somebody, but it just seemed like it was impossible. They ended up running fingerprints and found out that what this guy's claiming is true. This man's name is Adrian Arkham. He's the grandfather of Bruce Wayne and the father of Martha Wayne. Now, for anybody out there who is familiar with the Batman mythos, there's a kind of spookiness that surrounds the Arkham side of Bruce Wayne's family, right? The Waynes just come from a bunch of money, right? And I guess technically so did the Arkhams, but the Arkhams were always dealing with things like a curse, right? The Arkham Asylum that just kind of follows them around, so to speak, as this legacy and testament to just terrible things that have happened over the years. And so because of that, what ends up going down here is we get this explanation from Bruce and saying none of this can be true, right? Martha Wayne saw her mother shoot her father and then watched her mother jump from the rooftop, right? Like, this guy's dead. He was declared dead. This guy was buried. There's no way this can be true. Now, technically it was a closed funeral. Ashes were basically spread. So there was not really a physical body to verify that it was him, but seemed like it was. And so as a result of that, Bruce Wayne just ends up taking Arkham under his own care, just because of the fact that this institution is just a really, really crappy place, right? They really mistreat people. And the way that you know how twisted and messed up this guy is that once he's taken back to Wayne Manor and he basically comes to, when the medicine and everything starts to wear off, he starts asking the question like, where's my daughter, right? And then like he immediately attacks Bruce and he starts talking about how like the spirits have taken his wife, right? Like the spirits of Arkham have taken my daughter, that kind of thing. But as he looks on Bruce, of course, he sees Martha's eyes in Bruce's eyes, and then he realizes, you know, you're something akin to my little girl, and Bruce spills the beans and says, yes, like I'm Martha's son, but unfortunately Martha was killed. And so at this point, you just kind of have Arkham, who's largely going to be a background character for the rest of what goes on here. He does come back at the end, and he's an incredibly important part of the story at the end, but for right now, he's just kind of there, and you do sort of see him from time to time, but he's more or less lingering. What's really important here is you pick up with a handful of these thugs, where they say word has spread through Gotham. Every gang in the city will be there, and we've got something for every single one of them, in the sense that they're basically handing out arms and armament, with all these groups organizing themselves under a single person. When the question's asked, who is this guy? This dude responds, it's Harvey Dent. And one of the guys is just like, that's not a chance, right? Harvey Dent's dead. No way these guys are all unified under a dead man. And the response is, nope, Harvey Dent's alive, right? And we're all basically working for him because he is organizing an attack against Gotham. Now, word ends up reaching the ears of Batman about this whole meeting among all these gangs that's going down. And then Batman shows up, and then things kind of go sideways, right? Because while Batman's looking in, he's ambushed by one of the guys who's patrolling the area. Because again, as we talked about in the last video, that the Earth 1 stories, as we've seen them so far, are just kind of like Bruce Wayne becoming Batman. So he's not as capable as we would normally expect him to see. But when this goes down, of course, Batman attacks the guy, and then the fight leads to the roof collapsing in, and Batman landing in the midst of all these gangs. And they've got everything, guys. I mean, they've got like M16s, they've got rocket launchers, they've got all kinds of stuff. I mean, these dudes are loaded for bear. One of them fires this rocket launcher off, and you get this dope moment where Batman just comes swooping in, right? With his arms and everything out. It looks so cool. It's just one of my favorite moments from the whole story. That's one of the things I love about Earth 1. You do get these amazing shots of Batman, right? It's absolutely phenomenal. The problem with this is Batman is completely overwhelmed, but then suddenly, he's saved by Catwoman. She literally shows up in her full Catwoman outfit. And again, the way she looks, she doesn't look like Catwoman the way you would traditionally expect. It looks kind of makeshift. I'm not gonna lie. It looks like something she got from Halloween Express. Doesn't make it bad, right? It just looks pretty basic. And that's one of the best things about Earth 1 is nobody has all the crazy fancy costumes that you're used to. It's literally just like a bunch of dudes and women running around in costumes. But of course, she ends up helping Batman through all of this, but Bruce Wayne figures something out along the way. Because while she's here, what she actually ends up doing is just ransacking a whole bunch of money, right? Just stealing a whole bunch of cash and making out like a bandit. But Bruce Wayne realized she knew about this whole meeting, which means she's got her ear to the ground when it comes to all this stuff that's going down out there, right? Everything that criminals are doing. So Batman ends up taking one of these guys. And of course, he basically interrogates them as Batman normally interrogates people, right? Terrorizing them and convincing them that he's probably going to kill them, and even allowing this dude to believe that like Killer Croc is going to eat him, right? So there's any number of things that Batman uses at his disposal for his interrogation techniques, but this guy ultimately reveals that Harvey Dent is the one who is running the show. And this is kind of a big awakening for Batman, because what it shows is he doesn't know everything. And you guys know what that means, right? You guys know what that means. The allegory of Plato's cave. Yes, I said it. Whoever it is that said that they were going to take a shot every time I say this, take your shot. So the cool thing here is you pick up with Jessica Dent, and you have Batman who goes to see her. And the initial thought here from Batman is that Jessica is Harvey Dent. And the reason for that is, if you guys remember at the end of the last video that we did, there's this moment where as soon as she wakes up, she speaks in the voice of Harvey Dent and tells Bruce Wayne, stay away from my sister. But then he just kind of snaps back to herself and her normalcy. And so Batman just kind of considers it, you know, just maybe some weird experience or something like that. Maybe her just kind of snapping out of what seemed to be a coma. And he doesn't really give it a whole lot of thought, but now he is. And he even tells her, like, that's what you said, right? You said, stay away from my sister. You sounded like your brother, Jessica. I hoped it was just a moment of confusion or trauma, but someone told me Harvey Dent is behind the weapons pouring into Gotham. And even she is just kind of like, my brother's dead, right? And he says, I know he is, but the trauma that you've experienced, it may have done something. But any question as to whether or not this is Harvey Dent is wiped away when her phone rings and it's a call from Harvey. And when they answer it, it's on speakerphone, and Batman can hear that it's Harvey. And it's the coolest exchange, right? It's one of the coolest moments for the character of Two-Face, because what Harvey does is he asks the question, he's there with you, isn't he, Jess? The Batman. And he says, hello, Bruce Wayne. And he's like, I'm not all here. I'm half dead, sister. Rotten flesh, rotten soul. I thought I was condemned by destiny, burned by the men I convicted, but then I realized, no, I was given a second chance to do what I should have done years ago. Left alive for one final act as the district attorney to convict the most guilty party of all, Gotham City. Now, if you guys are paying attention, you know exactly what's going on here right now. In fact, you probably already figured it out, but I'm curious to see if anybody guesses it before we get to the end, because I'm excited. It's cool. Anyway, what he does is he says, you want to rebuild Gotham, but it's already been sentenced, and that sentence is going to be carried out very, very soon. This is your only warning, Jessica. Get out before it all burns like they burned me. And that's it, right? He just like hangs up the phone. The call is effectively over. And so what you get is this moment where Batman goes to meet with Commissioner Gordon, and he doesn't buy any of this at all. He's just like, somebody's posing as Harvey Dent. Track the phone of Jessica and see what's going on, right? Like, see if you can gain any information. Of course, his daughter Barbara is the one who does it, which I think I called Barbara his wife in the first video. I'm pretty sure I did, because everybody in the comment was typing that out and telling me like they were the only one to notice it. But it's one of those weird things, right? Yeah, so Barbara is his daughter. It's not his wife. But after that, you have the question that's just asked by Bruce Wayne. What in the world is going on, right? Is Harvey Dent really dead, right? It's this itch that he can't quite scratch. More so than that, he does meet back up with Catwoman again. There is a kind of potential romantic tension that's going on between the two, but Batman actually takes a smart approach, right? What he says is like, because you were there at like the whole meeting with the criminals, clearly you know what's going on in the criminal underworld. So I need you to feed me information whenever you hear about any more of these meetings. And she's just kind of like, I mean, I can for a price. And so like, you know, he ends up giving her money. He ends up paying her like $75,000 for information. It's kind of not what Batman does. Normally he would just look at her, right? With just like the 1,000-yard stare. And she would just kind of be like, okay. Or he would just like wear her out on the rooftop, right? If you're picking up what I'm putting down, and then just like, give me the information when you get it, right? And she's just like, sure, man, just, you know, we'll keep these meetups going and I'll give you all the information you need. But then you go into a little bit of history here. And I love it when they do this history stuff in the comics, because there's this point where Bruce Wayne comes home and he finds Arkham just standing on the roof preparing to jump off. And you have a kind of discussion between the two where Arkham basically reveals what is in effect the Arkham curse. And he says it all started when Abraham Arkham and his family left the old world. They were hired by the Waynes. Abraham found work as an architect and city planner. He sent for the rest of his family, and the Arkhams built Gotham. But one day beneath the city, they found something. Ultimately, they found bats. Now these bats just end up chewing on these guys for a little while. They don't necessarily kill them. And in fact, Arkham says the Arkhams were driven mad, bitten by the evil spirits of the men and women who died on the land we were building over. The madness takes every generation of Arkham at some point in some way. Did your mother ever tell you that she had a twin brother? And the response of Bruce is no. This is something he never knew. And in fact, even Martha didn't know, because this baby ended up dying in the womb. And that's what set everything in motion. That the mother of Martha came to believe that Martha herself was instructed by the spirits to kill her twin brother in the womb. And so at 10 years old, Martha's mom ended up like grabbing a gun, trying to take her daughter out. That Arkham hid Martha in a closet, and then he went after his wife to try to get the gun. She opens fire on him. That's how he gets shot. Then she jumps from the roof. So it was absolute madness. But how does a person have such a psychotic break? And that is where the curse comes in. And so that's why this guy believes that the curse really is real. And so of course, Bruce ends up bringing him back into the house, and he kind of talks him down, that sort of thing. And then you pick up with what's probably the most screwed up part of the story, because what ends up happening is that with Bruce trying to figure out whether or not Harvey Dent is actually dead, Alfred, Bruce Wayne, and Killer Croc end up going to the Gotham Cemetery, and they start digging up graves. And I gotta be honest for you guys, man, even for Batman, this is pretty messed up. Like, it's just not something that you see every day. When was the last time you saw a story where Batman was digging up graves, right? That's just... It's crazy, man. It's crazy. But the fact is, once they get this thing open, Harvey Dent's gone, right? His grave is empty. And so it's just like, damn, this dude really is back, right? Like, that's really the case. Now, of course, Batman also gets a call from Catwoman. Yes, he has a bat on his phone. I need that phone. And she tells him, like, there's another meeting going down here, right? And so, of course, Batman ends up responding. But then you have Jessica, who's leaving the parking structure of City Hall. And then suddenly, Harvey Dent is just standing there waiting hitting on her. The two of them end up meeting and Jessica starts talking to him, right? She says like, let me see you, Harvey. And he says, no. Now here's the cool thing, and this is something that I want you guys to notice. The police car itself is trashed, but only on one side. And that was always kind of the dichotomy of Harvey Dent, right? That one side of him was normal, one side of him was just totally wrecked. And it was designed to represent the opposing ideologies of like right and wrong, good and evil, different things like that, right? The inner turmoil of mankind, or if you want to get super philosophical into it. But again, like she's like, I know that you're in pain and I know you're scared and confused. I am too. You've always been there for me since we were children. I want to be there for you. And where he asks like, what about Bruce? She says, Harvey, Bruce is my friend. You're my brother. And so she says, I'll go first. And she removes the mask on her face, which is just a couple of little patches, right? A couple of little scars. Then Harvey Dent shows his face and the whole side of it is absolutely melted. And so again, that's where things get kind of murky here, because what you have is Catwoman telling Batman that under Harvey Dent's control, leadership, whatever, there's a massive influx of guns that are being brought into Gotham City and they're being escorted in by Gotham City's police department because they're all being paid. And so even Batman says like, we have to call the cops and let them know what's going on. She's like, well, you better call somebody you can trust, because if you call this guy that you trust and he tells the wrong guy, he's a dead man. They're gonna kill him, right? Crooked cops kill cops they can't trust, right? And so the only person that Jim Gordon, which is the guy that Batman reached out to, the only one that he can rely on is Harvey Bullock, which as we've seen over the last two stories that we've done, this guy is in no condition to do anything. Gotham City has taken its toll on Harvey Bullock. He showed up here with a nickel slick smile, ready to make a name for himself, and Gotham chewed him up, and it's still chewing him up. Hadn't even spit him out yet, right? It's still chewing this guy up. He's a drunkard, right? He can barely hold his life together. He got into a fight with his new partner once Jim Gordon was promoted to captain. I mean, all kinds of crazy things are going on with this guy's life. But the way this plays out is you have Arkham, while all this is going on, talking about how he's going to burn down the thing that had been built that carries on the Arkham curse. And so this guy starts a fire, which is crazy because that's going to be important. And we're going to circle back around to that here in a little bit. Not only that, in this meeting that Jessica has with Harvey Dent, Harvey ends up chastising her, right? Like, you sided with Bruce Wayne over your own brother, right? That's the guy you chose over your own brother, Bruce Wayne. Like, as soon as I am done taking out the city of Gotham, I'm going to take you out. And so of course she ends up running away. She's almost killed by a rocket launcher, and of course Batman saves her. And so while that's happening, Barbara calls Jim Gordon and she says, I traced the phone. I figured out who the voice was. It's not Harvey Dent. At the moment that happens, Batman opens the door to the car where Harvey is and a corpse falls out. It's the body of Harvey. He's dead as a doornail. And that's when you get the revelation, which so many of you guys guessed, Jessica is Harvey Dent. She's got a split personality, right? That's literally what happened. Her mind broke, right? Because of everything that she experienced, her mind broke. And so yes, she is Harvey minus the whole destroyed face on one side. Not only that, Arkham shows up and cracks Batman over the head because Arkham is not who you think he is. And so when all this kind of comes to a head, Bruce Wayne's tied up, Arkham's drawing bats all over the walls like a crazy person, and Jessica basically kind of goes on this huge grandiose speech where Arkham starts talking about how there's the Arkham curse and that Gotham itself is screwed up and poisoned. That Jessica says, your grandfather's right, Wayne. Gotham is at fault here. Don't get me wrong. I hate you for the pain you inflicted on my sister, but you're not entirely to blame. Your grandfather is helping me burn this down. Like he helped me keep watch over you, shared the secrets of the city, of your family. It's so tragic. And so there is a kind of going back and forth with Jessica where she's sort of fighting the Harvey Dent persona. The bigger point here is that Arkham comes to this conclusion that in order to quote unquote save Wayne, that he has to be purged through fire. And so the first thing they do is they brand an A on his chest, which is pretty extreme. Now, of course, he ends up freeing himself and then going after Arkham, and he almost kills this guy. But then like a gun is pulled by Jessica on Bruce, she's gonna shoot him, and then Catwoman shows up and rescues Bruce Wayne, right? Like, so she's there to save that guy die yet again. Not only that, of course, Jessica is basically pulled out seemingly in the middle of all of this, and then Arkham, he seems to collapse under a building, but instead of immediately going for Arkham, Batman goes for Jessica. And what ends up happening is there's this kind of back and forth for a brief moment where she becomes lucid, where she has control of her mind instead of Harvey. And she says, like, I can't stop him. I cannot get rid of this Harvey persona. There's nothing that I can do here. You have to let me go. And so even when Batman says, like, I will find a way to save you because I love you, she jumps off the building and she says, I love you too. And then she's caught by Killer Croc. So no, Jessica doesn't die. Don't worry, guys. I know some of you guys are worried about Jessica dying. She does not die, right? Because I'll be honest, man, I kind of love the idea that she's got a split personality with Harvey Dent. But then Batman looks over his shoulder and there's Arkham walking up to him, literally melting, right? Like the skin melting off of his body. It's incredibly gruesome. But at the end of the day, Commissioner Gordon shows up, sprays this guy down with a fire extinguisher, and he's taken away. This is when you get this amazing revelation, because what happens here is Batman asks the question, so who is this guy? Because you end up finding out this guy is not actually Adrian Arkham. Adrian Arkham's dead. That guy's been dead for quite some time. So what they say is, Mr. Wayne, we're not completely sure, but what the techs in the lab do know is that his skin has been altered somehow, fused with a compound that no one has been able to identify. It's given his flesh a malleable quality. That tells you everything you know right there, but let's continue on, right? This is the doctors who we've spoken to think it could be the result of some kind of experimental plastic surgery or chemical exposure or even a birth defect. They cannot rule anything out. As for his identity, when his fingerprints were more closely examined, we discovered another layer underneath the ones he currently has. These were the fingerprints of a guy named Preston Payne. He vanished 3 years ago after embezzling tens of millions of dollars from Star Labs. Under those fingerprints was another guy, Matt Hagen. And then finally, under all of that was a guy named Basil Carlo. We can't go any further because it's just unrecognizable at that point, but Basil Carlo, of course, was basically an actor who was accused of killing his co-star. Basil Carlo, for those of you guys who are not familiar with the character in DC Comics, is Clayface. So it's so cool, right? Like, that's who this guy is. It was Clayface masquerading. The whole thing was a plan between Jessica and Clayface to bring down Batman. But then following that, because you guys know there's always a big reveal at the end of this whole thing, Arkham Asylum is revamped by Batman, right? It's restructured and reset by Bruce Wayne into a place of healing and care. One of the things that happens is that a guy is being transported in a truck, and then this truck ends up hitting a whole bunch of nails. The door to the truck is open, and this guy says, they call you the Toy Man because you make toys. I need some to kill a lot of children and their pets. And when this guy asks, who are you? It's the Joker, and he says, I'm nobody. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end, and you know what's worse about this? There's no more. This is it. This is volume 3. They have not made a volume 4 yet. No idea when it's ever gonna come out. But thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.